Picture this: a goalkeeper who turns 40 during a World Cup, a nation with a population smaller than the city of Tucson, Arizona, a team ranked 67th in the world, and a group that contains the reigning European champions, two-time world champions Uruguay and Saudi Arabia. Now ask yourself, what were you expecting to happen? Because what actually happened at the 2026 FIFA World Cup has left football fans around the world completely speechless. Cape Verde, a tiny island archipelago sitting off the west coast of Africa, walked into the biggest football tournament in human history for the very first time. And they didn't just survive, they refused to lose. 3 matches, 3 unbeaten results, a 0-0 draw against Spain, a 2-2 comeback against Uruguay, and a 0-0 shutout against Saudi Arabia to seal their place in the round of 32. The smallest nation by population ever to reach the knockout stages of a men's FIFA World Cup, on their debut against those opponents without ever having played a single World Cup game before June 15. How? How did they do it? And is this the greatest underdog story in World Cup history? That's exactly what we're getting into today, and I promise you, by the end of this video, you are going to feel something. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, now is the perfect moment to do it. Hit that subscribe button so you never miss a breakdown like this one, because stories like Cape Verde don't come around often. To understand just how extraordinary this is, you need to understand where Cape Verde comes from and what they were up against before a single ball was kicked in 2026. Cape Verde is an archipelago of 10 volcanic islands scattered across the Atlantic Ocean, roughly 570 kilometers off the coast of Senegal. The total population sits at just over 525,000 people. For context, that's smaller than every single state in the United States, with Wyoming being the closest comparison. It's smaller than most mid-sized European cities. It is, by population, the smallest nation ever to qualify for a FIFA World Cup, and now the smallest ever to reach the knockout rounds. The national team has existed since 1978, 3 years after Cape Verde gained independence from Portugal. For decades, they were a footnote in African football qualification. 7 failed World Cup qualifying campaigns. A country whose footballing ambition always outran its resources and its reach. But in 2020, something changed. A man named Pedro Brito, known everywhere simply as Bubista, took over as head coach. Bubista is not a household name in global football, but he is a legend in Cape Verde. He captained the national team for over a decade as a player, earning 28 international caps and embodying the country's spirit in the process. When he transitioned to the dugout, he brought with him an identity built on one unshakable principle: be very, very hard to beat. Disciplined defending, tactical organization, and a fearlessness about facing anyone, anywhere. Under his guidance, Cape Verde topped their African qualifying group with 23 points, 7 wins, 2 draws, 1 defeat. They knocked out Cameroon, a continent heavyweight, and sealed their place at the 2026 World Cup with a 3-0 win over Eswatini in front of a roaring crowd in the capital, Praia. When the group draw for the tournament came out and placed them alongside Spain, Uruguay, and Saudi Arabia, nobody gave them a chance. Not one credible analysis suggested Cape Verde could advance, and that was exactly where Bubista wanted them. Make sure you're subscribed so you catch our full breakdown of Cape Verde versus Argentina in the round of 32. That preview is coming very soon, and it's going to be a big one. Now let's talk about the man who has become the undeniable face of this entire story. His real name is Josimar José Evora Diaz, but nobody calls him that. Everybody calls him Vozinha. It means little grandmother in Portuguese, a nickname given to him by the older kids in his neighborhood who used to beat him at football and tease him for going home to his grandparents. He wore the nickname like a badge of honor, and it stayed with him for his entire career. Vozinha was born in Mindelo, a coastal town of 70,000 people on the island of São Vicente. He always wanted to be a striker, but ended up in goal. He was good enough as a teenager, but when he went for trials as a young man, coaches told him he was too small. He kept working. He kept waiting. He didn't turn professional until the age of 25, making his debut for an Angolan club called Progresso in 2012, the same year Spain won their final major tournament before this one. In the 19 years since, Vozinha has played in Cape Verde, Angola, Moldova, Portugal, Cyprus, and Slovakia. He's played in leagues most football fans have never heard of. He's had exactly one trophy in his career, a Cypriot Cup win in 2019. He's been representing his national team since 2012, appearing at 4 Africa Cup of Nations tournaments over the years, always hoping that one day Cape Verde would reach the World Cup, and he always believed they would. "I continued because of this dream," he said ahead of the tournament. "A lot of generations in the past dreamed of this day, but they did not achieve it, and now the dream comes true." On June 15, 2026, Vozinha walked out at Atlanta Stadium for Cape Verde's first ever FIFA World Cup match against Spain, the reigning European champions, ranked second in the world. At 40 years old and 12 days old, he became the oldest player ever to feature in a nation's World Cup debut match, and then he did something that made the entire world stop. Spain had 27 shots, 7 on target. They brought on Lamine Yamal in the second half. They threw everything they had at Cape Verde's goal, and Vozinha stopped all of it. 7 saves, a clean sheet, a 0-0 draw. When the final whistle blew, Vozinha sank to his knees near his goal and cried. His teammates mobbed him, and within minutes of that match ending, his Instagram following exploded from 46,000 to over 1 million. Within hours, it was closing in on 10 million. The football world had found its hero. He cried, he explained later, because his grandparents had passed away before this moment, and because his mother couldn't get her visa approved in time to be in Atlanta. His mother missed watching her son make history because the paperwork didn't come through. If that doesn't hit you somewhere deep, nothing will. If you're not subscribed yet, please do it right now. This is the kind of storytelling we bring every week, and the Cape Verde journey is far from over. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. We're not going anywhere. But Vozinha's story is only one thread in this tapestry, because Cape Verde's performance at this World Cup hasn't been built on one man's brilliance alone. Bubista has assembled a squad from across the global Cape Verdean diaspora, players born and developed in Portugal, the Netherlands, France, who have chosen to represent the land of their heritage. Players like Kevin Pina, a midfielder who plays in Russia, who stepped up against Uruguay and scored Cape Verde's first ever World Cup goal with an audacious 30-yard free kick that curled through the defensive wall and nestled into the bottom corner. Players like Elio Varela, who snatched the late equalizer against Uruguay to complete a dramatic 2-2 comeback from a position where Cape Verde had been trailing. Players like Logan Costa, their best outfield defender, who returned from an ACL injury with just 13 minutes of match time under his belt before the World Cup, and Bubista gambled on his fitness anyway. The system Bubista has built is not about keeping the ball or dominating possession. It's about organization, compactness, belief, and a willingness to hurt teams on the counterattack at the exact moment they get comfortable. Spain had 27 shots and still couldn't score. Uruguay led twice and still couldn't hold on. Saudi Arabia needed a vital goalkeeper save late in the game to even have a chance against them and still couldn't find the net. 3 matches, 3 clean sheet defenses, 3 different opponents, 3 unbeaten results. This matters for a reason that goes beyond Cape Verde specifically. It matters because football is obsessed with money, with super clubs, with transfer windows and shirt sponsorships, and television deals worth hundreds of millions of dollars. The conversation around football at every level is increasingly dominated by resources. Who has the most? Who can attract the biggest stars? Which nation has the deepest player pool? And then Cape Verde arrive at a 48-team World Cup, playing in a group with Spain and Uruguay, with a squad of players from the Portuguese Second Division, a goalkeeper who is closing out a 19-year career at clubs most fans have never followed, and a coach who doesn't even have a household name. And they become the smallest nation in the history of the sport to reach the knockout stage of a Men's World Cup on their very first attempt. Boavista said it best after they qualified. Once you're on the pitch, a lot of things become equal. As big as the opponent might be on the world stage, many national teams become equal. That's not a motivational poster quote. That's a football truth that this tournament has just proven, loudly and unmistakably. Subscribe to the channel if you want to follow Cape Verde all the way through this tournament. We're going to be covering every game they play, every twist in this story, and every moment that this team adds to its already remarkable legacy. You don't want to miss a single second of what comes next. Now, let's talk about what comes next, because on July 3rd in Miami, Cape Verde faced Lionel Messi's Argentina. The reigning world champions, the greatest player in football history, who has already scored 5 goals at this tournament and broken the all-time World Cup scoring record. A squad built to defend their title, a nation of 45 million people against a nation of 525,000. Nobody gives Cape Verde a realistic chance of winning that match. The numbers are stark, the quality gap is obvious, and Argentina are the defending champions for a reason. But 3 weeks ago, nobody gave Cape Verde a realistic chance of drawing with Spain either. Nobody thought they'd come back to earn a point against Uruguay. Nobody believed they'd hold Saudi Arabia at arm's length and seal their knockout place with a clean sheet. Boavista will set his team up to be hard to beat, just as he always does. Vozinha will stand between the posts, defying logic and physics in equal measure. And 525,000 people on those 10 islands in the Atlantic will be watching, knowing that their country is doing something no one thought possible. What should we expect from this Cape Verde team going forward? The realistic scenario is that Argentina's quality eventually tells, and the Blue Sharks' extraordinary group stage journey ends in the round of 32. But the best-case scenario, and football loves a best-case scenario, is that Vozinha produces another performance for the ages, that the defensive organization Boavista has drilled into this team hold firm, and that Cape Verde somehow find a way to shock the world one more time. Because that's what underdogs do. They don't read the script, they don't respect the odds, and when they have a goalkeeper whose own mother couldn't be there to watch him in person playing in his country's first ever World Cup at the age of 40, after a 19-year career spent grinding across 6 different countries for this moment, you can't rule anything out. Cape Verde are the greatest underdog story of the 2026 FIFA World Cup, and this story is not finished yet.